Welcome to another edition of the Play Absolutely Ba-Bum podcast. Hi, Sue. How you doing?
Hi, Andy. I'm well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And you, just before we pressed the record button, you were a little bit worried about your nose. Of course, for those that are unaware, you had some minor surgery on your nose a month or two ago. And for the regular watchers, they will have seen your nose slowly healing. It's barely visible now. How does it feel?
Yes, I still feel self-conscious about it.
Okay.
Feeling I ought to have some cover-up of some kind, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you first had it done, you had a couple of plasters over your nose, which looked quite funny. I'm being kind there. Oops, you're changing your
Yes, it keeps slipping
thing.
again, you see.
Okay. Right. So just be wary of your volume. So have you, stop playing around with your headset. Okay. I know it's the Play Absolutely podcast, but certain things we're not allowed to play with. It's like a few weeks ago, we were talking about the no ball game signs.
Yes.
You know, some things you can't play with, and that includes balls in public spaces with no balls play signs, and headphones when we're recording. Okay, so right. Well, how's your playful week been? What have you been up to playfully wise?
Well, interestingly, finding more opportunities to teach play, which people have been requesting, which I'm very pleased about. It really does seem that people like teachers and social workers need some extra help so that they can work with parents. Oh, your playful mug.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, and how have you found it? The different people that you've been working with.
Well, I've had to find more ways that we can be playful in online teaching because people contact me from globally, not just from the UK. So I need to be one step ahead, looking for playful materials, things that can be expanded and extended and so on. So
Yes, it is. No, I was going to say it's a big challenge, isn't it? That sort of post-COVID, really, more and more teaching activities are taking place online, and I mean, some people might suggest that it's a relatively easy way to teach. You can pre-record stuff. You can stay in the comfort of your own home or a single place. You don't have to travel places. But despite the ease, if you like, of not only of teaching, but also of learning, there is a clamor of people. No, I want the live stuff. I don't want the recorded stuff. I don't want the online stuff. I want the face-to-face. I want to breathe the same air as my fellow colleagues or students or trainers, be in the same space, feel the same energy, be able to, look people in the eye, have some kind of contact, even if you're not actually physically touching, being able to have that immediate contact with people.
Well, I'm looking at that as well. I've identified a space that can be a play space. So if people did want to come live, there's a play space for them to come to now.
Okay, that's good.
So, and interestingly enough, whether this is a new trend, I don't know yet, but people are asking for play sessions for themselves. A therapeutic way of working with adults, learning to play again. So not being so much in a teacher's role, but being more in a therapeutic role of enabling people to remember when did they stop playing? What actually happened? And that's been a very interesting development since we last spoke, in actual fact.
Okay. I suppose we also always need to be careful when talking about things like therapeutic play, or therapeutic theatre is that people don't get confused. If they're engaged in therapeutic theatre or therapeutic play, that doesn't mean that we're teaching therapy or that we're therapizing somebody. It's just this
Mm,
grand concept, I think, is that play itself or theatre itself are therapeutic mediums
mm,
rather than, you know, teaching somebody or engaging somebody in therapy, which are,
mm,
is something that's totally different.
mm. But I think we could sometime explore this idea of healing play, play that heals.
Mm. Give us some examples of play that heals.
Mm.
So when you say healing, you're sort of saying like from a trauma, so
Mm.
emotional stuff, or are you saying that play can also heal physical pain and injury?
Well, certainly enabling play uh, can help people's confidence, for example, if
Hmm.
they've been through experiences that have affected their self-esteem.
Right.
Being able to play again and suddenly feeling they have that capacity to play and that I'm prepared to be a playmate, so to speak, with them
Mm-hmm.
makes a difference. That they finish the session feeling better than when they came to it.
Okay.
And that's a good enough measure for me. If somebody is feeling more enabled, feeling better, feeling brighter, feeling the world isn't such a dreadful place as
Hmm.
they were thinking.
So if I was going to play devil's advocate here, we could say, okay, that's all very well. That's kind of anecdotal evidence, if you like. But have you actually got any scientific or sort of peer review evidence that play can assist in healing, as you suggest?
Well, I think the number of research programs and the number of PhDs now being worked on, people being registered for. Um, I have a colleague that lives very near me who's just completed their PhD
Mm.
on the impact of play on certain populations. So, yes, I think there is a growing evidence, but of course, together with that is, well, how are we going to define play in the first place?
Mm.
What do we actually mean by it when we say learning to be playful?
So, what do we mean by
Mm.
playful? What does it mean to you, Sue? Play. I mean, don't come back to with me. It can mean several or many different things, depending on the person, depending on the
Mm.
context, the
Mm.
situation. Uh, if
I
if we're
think
going to
the
push.
easiest way to define it,
Mm,
if you think back to the very early days of drama in education, and do you remember there was a game called Change the Object?
yes,
And
play
you'd
it.
pass a stick around the room, and
Hmm.
people had to use it as different things.
Yeah.
And they might use it as a flute, they might use it as a conductor, they might use it as a banana and peel the skin, all these different things. Now that
Hmm.
is being playful.
Okay.
And playful means being able to use our imagination.
Okay. Okay. So I know we've not just on the podcast, but in trainings and sessions and group work that we've participated in together, that there are lots of different concepts of play, and you've come up, created, developed many different concepts. But I want to bring a new one to you, one that I've been tinkering with myself. Uh, just see what you think about it, and that is the concept of emotional play. Now, I haven't heard you use that as a concept, emotional play.
Mm.
So, do you think that could become a standalone concept, emotional play? And what does that mean to you?
Of course, a lot of play involves emotions. We're expressing our emotions through play.
Hmm.
A child might play a very angry game or a very soothing game or a very happy game. So, yes, I mean, emotions are directly involved in playfulness.
Okay. But in terms of itself, would you say that it's just a sort of a general emotional play, something that is attached to all different kinds of play, or can it become sort of a self-defined concept in itself, sort of emotional play as a positive thing, a shared imagination, dealing with real feelings and getting a playful distance and so on,
Mm,
depending on the activities that you're doing. Uh,
mm,
and then on the negative side, sort of playing with people's emotions, bullying somebody and going, oh, it was just a bit of fun. I was only playing with you. Or you've got the
mm,
concept of playing with people's emotions,
mhm.
sort of, making them sort of, I don't know, withdrawing love from somebody, and then you want something from them. So it's almost like, even if you don't say it directly, I'm not going to give you a hug, I'm not going to tell you I love you unless you do this, that, or the other. So it's
Yes.
quite a
Play
manipulative
then
thing.
becomes be very manipulative.
But that all the examples I've given are around emotions. So it's it's
Yes.
it's using emotions to play with people's feelings in
Well,
a positive way and a
manipulation
negative way.
mm, most
Mm.
manipulation is to do with feelings. You know, the dad that threatens a child, "I'm gonna wring your teacher right now and tell them you're telling lies,"
Right.
and then doesn't actually do it, but looks with a
Mm.
shock on the child's face, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
laughs, "Well, no, I wasn't doing it really, but you just learn a
Mm.
lesson now, because next time I will."
So
I mean,
is that it could that is that a positive or a negative lesson then?
extraordinarily negative.
All right. Well, so let's take the child's come home. No, all right, go and do your homework. No, I'm not doing homework. Go and do your homework. No, I'm not doing my homework. Okay, I'm going to ring your teacher to say you refuse to do your homework.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, is that a bad thing, or is just encouraging your kid to do their homework? Right? How can that be a really bad thing?
Well, the most important thing is to find out why the child doesn't want to do their homework.
I knew, I knew you'd deflect this somehow. Okay, yeah,
Rather
yeah.
than threatening them with an empty threat, but
Right.
nevertheless a
Okay.
threat that is frightening, a child who's frightened into doing their homework is going to do their homework less well than a
Mm.
child that's supported and encouraged.
So how can I mean this sort of leans towards this whole concept of sanctions, and some people would say no, you can't sanction people, it's not going to be productive. If you hit a child or you tell a child off, all they'll remember is the violence, whether it's the physical or verbal violence
Yes.
that's gone, rather than the thing they did which upset people in the first place. But sanctions in a society is a big thing. I know the Temyar don't really sanction people. So that's one example where we don't see
Yeah.
sanctions. But I would say in most other societies, including ours, most Western societies, sanctions play a big role in daily life, in parental life, in school life, in laws and so on. So if people don't stick to the rules, so to speak, I mean, that's the bottom
Well,
line, isn't it?
a
They're
sanction that is
sanctioned.
carried out is very different than a sanction that is threatened and
Okay.
not carried out, because we know the parent is not going to ring the teacher up and talk to them. It is
Mm,
what we call an empty threat,
right.
like the uncle I told you about way, way back that threatened to cut my head off.
Hmm.
You know, children that don't behave in our house have their heads chopped off. But I was so young, I wasn't yet aware of irony or threats that wouldn't be carried out. I believed that situation, and it
Uh,
ended up, it was traumatizing.
okay, let's do a little role play. Uh, okay, well, I don't need to pretend that I'm your son because I am, but let's imagine, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years ago, and I've just come back from school. Mom, I got all this homework. I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it.
Hmm. So what homework is it you're supposed to do?
I don't care. I don't know. I'm not doing it. I'm playing on my video games.
Okay, well, let's have a bargain. Then half an hour in your video game, and then we can sit down and look at your homework together.
Told you I'm not doing my homework. Yeah,
I
it's a
think
hard
my
one, isn't it?
invitation to share the homework would actually make you change your mind,
Maybe. Also,
particularly as I compromised.
you did, and also, but you didn't pick up on the point that back in that day, there was no such thing as video games either.
Exactly.
We didn't have them.
Yeah, I thought you
Yeah,
were using.
it's a.
I thought you were using poetic truth there.
I know. Well, I kind of was. Okay. It's a tough one. I think there's I think we could do things with emotional play. I think that if we thought about it a little bit more, I think it can become a whole concept for neurodramatic play, much like we introduced the new one, proactive play,
Hmm?
or you did, shall I say, a couple of weeks ago. Emotional play. I'll keep dropping you these new
Hmm.
ideas for play for you to play around with and maybe incorporate them
Hmm.
into NDP.
Well,
But
what I want to
go
say
on.
immediately, Andy, before you go on,
Yeah.
is we are actually using emotional play all the time.
Hmm.
You know, the way children are rewarded if they do something positive and so on.
Okay.
You know, when
Yeah.
you finish that, you can have your chocolate, or
Right. Of
when we've
course.
done that,
Yeah.
we can then go for a walk together. I mean, this idea of rewards and punishments exists. But the crucial thing is, do we carry out what we say we'll do?
Okay. So is it the threat of this emotional play that you have an issue with? So
Yeah.
if the parent was going to say, right, if you don't do it, I'm going to ring your teacher, rather than doing that, just ringing the teacher without the threat?
But I wouldn't ring a teacher,
Okay.
and most parents wouldn't.
Hmm. Yes,
I mean, I'll
you're
give you
right.
an actual example from
Okay.
a client um, who had a very angry mother that used to bring him for therapy. I was
Hmm.
always saying, I don't know what to do with him here. He won't do what I say, or um, the child was just almost 5 years old and had just
Okay.
begun to go to school. And he came home, and his mum asked him what he'd done at school, and he said, "Oh, we had a lovely day, and the teacher made hot chocolate, and we all had hot chocolate and biscuits," and
Mm.
painted this wonderful picture. And the mother looked at him and said, "You're lying. That's not true." And he said, "No, we had a lovely day with hot chocolate." So his mother went to the phone and said, "If you don't tell me the truth, I'm ringing up your teacher and asking, did she give you hot chocolate?" And what I think, as the therapist at the time, was happening was actually the child was having a terrible time, but was trying to
Right.
paint a picture to feel a bit better about it.
Mm.
But rather than seeing this as a story the child was telling,
Okay.
at not quite 5 years old, the mother was seeing it as lying. And when she came to see me next time bringing the child, she said, "He's going to be a delinquent. She said, he's lying already." You know, whereas if we start to think about a story, it immediately puts a different complex on it.
Mm.
Storytelling is one way of playing.
Yes, I saw a program yesterday, a little documentary about playing with stories. Well, about stories, really, in that if you go back into the past, it's very difficult, to find evidence of what's happened in the past. You've got occasional fossils and so on, but the argument goes, if there's a sort of huge meteor impact or nuclear war or whatever, that our current civilization would be wiped out, and in 10,000 years' time, you wouldn't know that there's been a civilization because everything would have been wiped out. All the metal and everything will be melted or go back into the earth. And the things that survive, we've always thought up until now, well, it's the big stones, the pyramids, the Stonehenge and so on that survived from previous civilizations. But what people are suggesting now, or what some historians are suggesting, is that we should take stories from the past more seriously, that actually maybe they were based on real events. We've turned them into myths and legends for whatever reason, but actually they're decoding some ancient so-called myths, stories, and finding that they equate to real life things that have happened, like huge global floods and so on. The Noah's Ark story. I mean, that flood story, from about the same time in multiple places around the world, nothing to do with religion, have this sort of great flood story. So there are some ancient stories that maybe carry information about things that have happened in the past, partly to help those in the present, because that's the only thing you can't, unless you wipe out all humans, the only thing you can't wipe out is sort of our memories, our storytelling, wipe out our buildings, our books, and so on. But the stories, they're the one thing that stay alive.
That's very interesting.
Yes, and talking about stories, let's go to this week's Play in the News. In the UK, The Guardian reports that children's reading should begin with pleasure, not targets, says the UK Parliament Education Committee. Children's laureate Frank Cottrell-Boyce told MPs that reading policy should prioritise pleasure before attainment. The article reports that only 1 in 3 UK children aged 8 to 18 enjoy reading in their spare time, with screens, poverty, austerity, and COVID all identified as the factors in the decline. This is not play in the playground sense, but it is play's cousin: voluntary, imaginative, pleasurable engagement. The warning is that when reading becomes only a measured skill, the playful relationship with stories can be killed off. Drama, storytelling, role play, image work, and reading all lose power when they are reduced to evidence production exercises. So, before children can love learning, they often need to be allowed to love the thing itself. And one question that comes to my mind is, how do schools protect joy without making it another target? And related to something you were talking about, in India, Chennai libraries become screen-free play and activity hubs, according to the Times of India. Chennai libraries have been running summer outreach activities, including yoga, reading sessions, chess, karam, board games, drawing, and storytelling. The report says 18 full-time libraries are involved, and more than 500 students have participated so far, with the program explicitly designed to engage children without screens. This is structured community play, but with a strong cultural purpose, getting children into public libraries and giving them offline social activity. Now, this matters for places where families may not have safe parks, private gardens, or paid clubs. So, remember, a library can be more than a quiet room. It can become a public playroom. And one question I have is, could UK libraries do more of this during the school holidays? That's this week's Play in the News. What do you think of those stories then, Sue?
Gosh, but both extremely interesting.
Mm,
But the idea of reading being something pleasurable rather than something assessed and modified. You know, people talk about reading ages.
mm,
At what age are you supposed to be able to read this or that? So a whole attitude in the home and the school needs to change towards reading. I've advocated in all my workshops for pregnancy that we encourage pregnant women to actually tell their unborn child stories because the voice is recognized.
mm.
Maybe the meaning isn't, but the sound and the undulation and the pausing and the surprises, the feelings in the voice are recognized.
Yeah.
So even before they're born, a child can get used to being told a story. And certainly from birth onwards, being read stories or told stories or an event turned into a story, even if it's eating your dinner,
Mm.
all convey this pleasure, providing the storyteller also is showing pleasure and excitement and interest. I mean, they have identified a storytelling area of the brain now, and according to scientists, the part of the brain of the storyteller that lights up when they're telling the stories, whoever is listening to the story, their brain also lights up in
Okay.
a similar way. So you actually get brain connection, let alone the content of the story. The actual act of storytelling will influence both the brains. So I think that
The
is very interesting.
no, it's amazingly interesting, and but one of the things it brings to my mind is the art of storytelling itself. I mean, it's a skill. You know, I've told
Yes.
you the story about when I was a teenager, babysitting somebody and being told by the child I was babysitting that I was rubbish at telling stories. Over the years, I've developed my
Mm,
skills as a storyteller.
mm,
Still a lot to learn. And one of the things that sort of jumps to my mind, and my first experience of this was when we first lived with the Temia, is that one of the really engaging ways of storytelling is not one person just telling the story, but you've got a main storyteller, and then you've also got somebody sort of with them, next to them, that is sort of making comments on the story as it goes on and doing exclaiming, "Oh!" and "Wow!" and asking little questions, you know. So they're almost like a double act, and then you've got
mm,
the audience listening as well. Uh,
mm,
what kind of what would you call that person that's doing not telling the main story, but is making the exclamations and asking the questions and sort of going "Whoa!" and all this kind of stuff,
mm.
kind of almost bouncing off them.
Yeah, that is interesting how that happens. And
Mm,
also how sometimes spontaneously in the audience, people will comment, sometimes to the detriment of the story. Like,
yeah,
um,
but
we had a storytelling event at our local museum, in Glastonbury,
mm,
and a local storyteller, well known for her storytelling, had a very big audience of adults and children, and she finished the story by saying, "And so the girl was banished forever. The princess never went back to her castle again, but the prince promised to find her and give her a happy life." And she ended his question. So do you think she lived a happy life in the end? And the 4-year-old in the front row shook her head and said, no, she won't. and the audience just
At
collapsed
4.
with laughter.
Oh, dear.
That's what happens if you ask a question at the end of a story. You have to be prepared for an answer. With children,
Absolutely. Mm, mm.
adults are probably too polite to do it most of the time.
So is there a special technique that, you're having the two-person telling the story, or is it not something? I mean, is it something you
Mm.
can be trained in doing, or is it just a natural thing, or
Mm. No, I think it's something you can ponder on. That first of all, just find out whether your voice is monotonous or not.
Hmm,
Some people will tell a story or a lesson or whatever, not realizing that the actual tone of their voice sends people to sleep.
I'm sure I'm not one of them.
I mean, we can all remember teachers at school with boring voices.
Mm,
So, is your voice varied? Do you need to have some voice lessons to
yeah,
actually vary the tone, the pitch of your voice, and so on? And I think one of the things about telling a story rather than reading a story is you can vary it because you can judge the audience's reaction to it. There may be some things you need to repeat using different words. You may have to elaborate on a description of something
hmm,
because as you're telling the story, you realize that what you know with this story and understand very quickly, you're jumping over hurdles with your audience and not giving them enough information.
right, yes.
So if people can develop the confidence to remember a story, but some people can't. They're too nervous. They're too anxious. They're going to suddenly not have anything to say.
Hmm,
So if it's a question of having to read a story, then you need to give it lots and lots of practice so that you can look up from the story at your audience, whoever's listening, and not just
hmm,
have this book in front of you all the
yeah.
time. So to know the story inside out, even if you're reading it, is really, really important.
Mm. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's like poetry, isn't there? You've got some people that can come up and deliver a poem without looking at a script.
Mm,
But you've also got other people, there's an actual word for it, where you've got poets that will have their script in hand
mm,
and deliver it. And I'm trying to remember what that's called. I'll put it up on screen, the word, because I've forgotten what it's called.
mm.
Okay. So anything playful that you've done this week? Anything new about play that has
Well,
jumped in
when you
your
spoke about libraries being
Hmm,
more playful areas, it reminded me when I did a tour of Somerset libraries
okay.
with my Moose and Mouse stories
Hmm,
and encouraged parents to bring young children. And if they were fidgety, I had some Moose and Mouse puppets that they could play with while I was telling the story.
okay.
So we don't get into this sit still, be quiet all the
Mm,
time. And I just wish there could be much more of that. I think some of our libraries are becoming more interactive. The big trouble in England at the moment is lack of funding for libraries.
of course.
But the more we could encourage, school library cooperation so that maybe a class could happen at a library instead of in the classroom. So that could encourage a more playful use of libraries. So we're back to playfulness again, rather than the librarian always going, shh, you know, we can have areas where we can quietly be playful.
Yes. Yeah. Playful libraries without the
Mm,
shushing. Uh, so, I mean, we've both had long, playful lives and engaged in a lot of group work with a variety of participants.
Mm,
Uh, I was thinking, I don't know why I was thinking about, the times that it goes wrong. It's like one of the facilitators' nightmares when they run a group session is that nobody will put their hand up to get involved, for
mm,
example.
mm,
So I'm going to relate a story, give the opportunity of thinking about one where I believe that the facilitator, who should know better, has sort of taken play to a place where it shouldn't be in a group work session. Give you an idea of, if you can remember something where play in a group work session has gone wrong and a facilitator has learned from that. I remember in one of the early days, I was working with a co-facilitator. So I was the lead. This guy was my assistant, and we were working with a group of teens that had been excluded from school. So they were a relatively difficult group to work with, but we were sort of muddling along. Uh, uh, but it wasn't an easy session. And I was sort of, you know, giving instructions on some activity, and there was a few people messing about, somebody running around, other people poking each other in the children in the group. And so, yeah, it's quite tough, but we're working through it. We're halfway through, and I'm already thinking to myself, oh, halfway done, be finished soon. And then out of nowhere, my co-facilitator suddenly starts shouting and screaming at the teenagers in the room. Why aren't you listening? You're not listening to us. You've shown some respect. And he just lost it. Totally, he lost it. I mean, it's normally a fantastic bloke, but he lost it. And I mean, it shook everybody up and they all started listening, but it was a very tense last bit of the session. I'd have a long talk with him afterwards. I didn't say anything in the session itself because actually it sort of got everybody back in line and they started to focus again. But it was a totally different vibe and we couldn't play anymore, if you like,
mm,
during the rest of the session. So for me, that was overreach. That was, almost a facilitator sort of losing control, if you like, of themselves.
mm,
And although it was a difficult session, I don't think it helped.
mm,
All it did was manage behavior.
mm.
So have you had anything, not necessarily similar, but where you think play has gone wrong?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I was working in a primary school, and the room they gave me to do group work play was far too small anyway.
Right.
We had to sort of really do quite controlled activities. Um, so on the spot, I made up a game that you walk across the room, as a character. So, okay, so right, they did it one by one. So I'm going to ask you to walk across the room as if you are a builder, as if you are a nurse, and so on. And they sort of got into it.
Okay.
But a couple of the children discovered a box in the corner, and in that box it was full of. Do you remember in the olden days when we had milk bottles with silver tops on,
Yeah.
and we were supposed to save the silver tops for
Oh,
charity?
right.
And
Yeah.
this was the equivalent
Yeah.
of
Yeah. I remember that.
a tea chest full of milk bottle tops. And these
Ah,
two kids said, "Look what we found," and emptied them all out all over the floor.
great
So
fun. I would have done that.
me thinking I was being very creative, saying, "Oh, so we can all walk across the room like we're road sweepers." They weren't having that. These were fun to throw. And it became a milk bottle top fight. They were just picking up
Wow.
handfuls and chucking at each other. Total chaos. Like your assistant, I wasn't shouting, but I certainly had to raise my voice and say, "Stop!"
Mm.
And then what helped it was I invented a slow motion game. Who can most slowly put a milk bottle top in the box? Luckily, I got them all cleared before the head teacher came to see how we were getting
Mm.
on. But, you know, extraneous things in the room that aren't needed in your drama session just don't help. Though the children
No.
could claim they were being very playful.
Well, indeed, and if I think back to what I was like as a teenager, I'm certain I would have had a lot of fun. I mean, with those because they were sort of the flexible. They weren't like the hard metal tops. It was thin, wasn't it? So you could flatten them and almost flick them so that they would
Yeah.
kind of almost frisbee,
Mm.
sort of skim through the air. Okay, well, let's draw this week's podcast to an end. Any last minute things you want to say, Sue, before we move to our final section?
Well, as always, any situation that's demanding, stop and look at it in a playful way to see if that helps.
Indeed. So, if you're feeling the blues, if you're feeling down or anxious, we like to end our pods with a little activity that you can do or not to try and help you release those blues or those sad feelings that you might be feeling. So, Sue, what have you got for us this week?
Well, remembering that traditional drama game, next time you're feeling tense, pick up an object off your desk or your kitchen table and pretend it's something else
Hmm,
and play with it.
and play with it.
Hmm.
Well, I'd like to relate to something you were talking about. Um, and that is storytelling and in terms of being able to have a voice that's not monotonous or boring. So one of the activities you can do, which is playful, and I think it's a standalone activity that can make you feel better about yourself afterwards, is counting and counting from 1 to 10, but not normally. So if we are asked to count from 1 to 10, most people will do something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But if you do it in a creative way, we'd add one thing. So when you're counting, add a rising inflection to the end of each number. So it then becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And actually, just doing that not only helps your voice, but it has a playful twist to counting. And at the end of it, when you count to 10, normally you go 9, 10. Is normally naturally you would have like a down inflection on the number 10. When you get people to do the counting with rising inflections, they go 1, 2, 3, they go 9, and then without thinking about it, they go 9, 10. You go, no, there's no. It's 9, 10, because it's quite
Mm.
strange to do that rising inflection on the last number
Mm.
you say, because it's like the downward inflection is sort of like the closing, the ending of a sentence. So it's just playing with words, and I think that little activity in itself takes you out of yourself and can help release some of those blues you're feeling. So if you have enjoyed this week's podcast, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, drop a comment below, let us know what you'd like us to talk about, and any comments you have or anything you disagree about what we've said, we will respond to all comments in future podcasts. So this is Andy saying, don't forget to play.
And Sue saying, definitely don't forget to play.
Definitely. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.